Hello, this is our very first video on Dr. Modern Metaphysics channel. In this video, we are going to explain when, where, and why exactly something named God came into humans' life. Please, note that you don't need to believe in any type of God or religious to understand what we are talking about. This episode is going to start about 0 second of the existence of the whole universe, up to now, and follow the footprints of the idea of God into human life. Imagine the 0 second of the universe. We have nothing to do with how it was before 0 second or how it has been created. There was a big bang. The whole universe was in a hot and moving state. Perhaps, the gaseous particles were traveling with an unbelievable speed. But it took them 300,000 years to learn how they can exist and make bigger stuff by gathering together. They wanted to exist and not just only a meaningless high-speed travel to nowhere. So they have decided to gather around the most dense of them to make the cores. You'll understand in next few seconds why I am telling you this. The more time passed by, the more complex objects they have formed and the more structured tiny meaningless particles got. It was the time when they have been transformed from an irregular, preposterous idea of randomness, nonsense particle to a meaningful strong society of particles, a space object. The particles of this universe could run away, from being weak, unprotected, and so on to something strong, structured and powerful to protect themselves, from so many other powerful forces were hitting them, or by easily being pulled or pushed, to destruction and death by stronger objects or forces. This is interesting, as we were talking about many things, but the idea of God. There was not even a clue that how the God might be entered into human life. Please, don't rush into anything as there was no human being till now. Again, many years later, the human being which was able to think had evolutionized. Human was lonely, bothered by cold weather, frightened by darkness and wild animals which could eat him. After a while human could find the fire. At the beginning human was frightened too, as it hurt him when he touched it. But after a while, human could understand that the fire could make the environment light when it was dark, and could protect him from the most of the wild animals and cold. As the most major problem of human at that time was cold, darkness and protection, and fire resolved all the problems. Fire was the God. It had the key component of the God, in that time, which was omnipotence, which means the unlimited power. There are so many evidence that the human worshipped fire for many years. Human felt safe and strong when he or she was around fire. The basic structure of the families were also formed by that time too. So this is the first footprint of idea of the God. There was an object human could feel complete and strong with it, and it could resolve its problem for many years, so it was worth to being worshipped as God. Also, the heat and light couldn't be considered as the laws of thermodynamics or chemical reactions that today we know about them. So these two major components of the fire were considered as the signs of omnipotence. After a while, as a result of reproduction of the human, evolution of the brain and more experience, human had gained during this period. The population of them was growing and they were facing more complex problems now. They were worried about the issues like the people on the left of the river would attack them and kill them. Also, as the population has grown, they had needed more food than the past. So they needed to hunt bigger animals to survive. So they copied the behavior of the small particles after the Big Bang. They formed bigger groups to survive. They also needed to set the most strong and smart one as the leader. Which there are evidence claim human worshipped the leader for many years. But again, why? At this time, we believe that the key properties of God were, first, omnipotence, as it came from more wisdom of the leader. Second, omniscience, which means the infinite knowledge, and it was as long as they could resolve the problems by thinking and their wisdom. But human society were growing so fast, and problems were becoming more and more complex. So the leaders had have to make hidden gods, to control other ones, which these made-up gods were, omniscience, omnipotence, divine, and as having an eternal and necessary existence. That was the time when we see the humans started worshipping the god of fertility, god of life, god of rain and etc. But how these gods, sometimes could make the wishes come true? We are going to answer this question later. But the point is, human brain was not even complete enough to make a god which would be complete. And we can see in the history human being worshipped so many planets, moon, sun, and etc. But there was still a problem. As these gods were defined, they were questioned in some situations. For instance, a planet X was the god of fertility, but after a while, as all the objects at the space are spinning around themselves and other objects were hidden whole, the people lost their beliefs and that god was no longer available. Also in the fights, as the villages were transformed to bigger and bigger ones to the countries, people did stupid things, as there were so many gods and so many fights were just on this issue. So many innocent people were killed just on this stupid fights. As the picture presents, a number of Greek gods and goddesses are shown, and we will explain them now. For instance, Zeus, Greek god of the sky and king of the gods. Zeus was the first of the gods and a very imposing figure. Often referred to as the father of gods and men, he is a sky god who controls lightning, often using it as a weapon, and thunder. Zeus is king of Mount Olympus, the home of Greek gods, where he rules the world and imposes his will onto gods and mortals alike. Zeus was the last child of the Titans Cronus and Rhea, and avoided being swallowed by his father, who had been told one of his children would overthrow him, when Rhea sought help from Uranus and Ge. Cronus had previously swallowed Demeter, Hestia, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Along with Hades and Poseidon, Zeus shared the rule of the world and became king of Olympus, as the children of Cronus were filled with admiration for their noble brother and sided with him against their unjust father, even following Zeus into the battle of the Titans. Zeus mated with many goddesses and mortals, including Aegina, Alcmena, Calliope, Cassiopeia, Demeter, Dione, Europa, Io, Leda, Leto, Mnemosyne, Niobe, Persephone, and Semele, but was married to his sister Hera, goddess of marriage and monogamy. Roles and responsibilities of Zeus. As the king of the gods and sitting atop the golden throne on Olympus, Zeus was revered by all. Mortal kings would boast that they were descendants of Zeus. With this supreme power came a number of roles and responsibilities. Hesiod described Zeus as a god who brought peace in place of violence and referred to him as the Lord of Justice. Though he is most well known as god of the sky and thunder, Zeus was the supreme cultural embodiment of Greek religious beliefs. He had many epithets, titles, that emphasized different aspects of complete and wide-ranging authority. Zeus Olympios emphasized Zeus's kingship over the gods. Zeus Xenios, Philoxenon, or Hospites, Zeus was the patron of hospitality, xenia, and guests, ready to avenge any wrong done to a stranger. Zeus Horktios, Zeus he was the keeper of oaths. Exposed lyres were made to dedicate a statue to Zeus, often at the sanctuary of Olympia. Zeus Agorius, Zeus watched over business at the Agora and punished dishonest traders. Zeus Aegiduchos or Aegiokos, Zeus was the bearer of the aegis with which he strikes terror into the impious and his enemies. Zeus Talios, solar Zeus, the Zeus that was worshipped in Crete. Zeus Gergos, earth worker, farmer, the god of crops and harvest, in Athens. Astropios, lightning earth. Brontios, thunderer. Appearance and personality of Zeus. According to Work and Days by Hesiod, line 59, Zeus was a carefree god who loved to laugh out loud. He was regarded as wise, fair, just, merciful, and prudent. He was also unpredictable, nobody was able to guess the decisions he would make. He was also easily angered, which could be very destructive. He has previously hurled lightning bolts and caused violent storms that wreaked havoc on Earth. Zeus fell in love easily and had many affairs with various women, however he would severely punish anybody who attempted to escort or fall in love with his wife Hera, like the giant Porphyrion who took a lightning bolt from the Ingricht god for lusting after his wife, albeit with a little help from the love god Eros. He is often described as a strong, imposing man with a regal body and long, often curly, hair. He usually had a short beard or scruff and carried his trusty thunderbolt at all times. Interesting. As the 21st century human, we can clearly reconsider Zeus as a made-up god, which by the way was necessary for those days, as the human was in a lower level of the wisdom and understanding, and could cause so many harms and dangers, if there was not a powerful god, to rule the world. Also, if there was not a powerful god to worship when he was feeling weak and lonely. But how these gods could make the human wishes come true? Answer this later. So the smart people of those days, made up gods. But there was still a problem. Too many gods and caused so many wars on earth and on the sky, as so many times people heard about the gods and goddesses were fighting. The prophets like Abraham, Muhammad, Jesus, Moses and etc. devoted the most major part of their lives to make a contribution at this part. They were trying to make a unified God. One single God, which is omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, which means presence everywhere, divine simplicity, and as having an eternal and necessary existence. Also described as being omnibenevolent, which means perfectly good and all-loving. Following the footprints of the idea of the God, beyond so many complex definitions and philosophers' explanation, we reach the main point here. God is whatsoever make you feel stronger, and makes you wishes comes true, but how again telling you later. We are stating here that the God exists and does not exists. We are going to explain this in later episodes. But if you are strong, smart, and so complete enough to don't feel miserable in difficulties and maybe kill yourself at the end, then that is why the idea of God does not make sense for you. But if we look out there, we can see so many people which are still in low level of wisdom and understanding, who might cause trouble, harm, and so on for the society if they would be freed from all these beliefs. Also, when we clarify what does the God, exists and does not exists, at the same time means, you'll have a better understanding from why people are likely to pick a God and worship it. By following the footprints of idea of God, from the Big Bang up to now, we let your mind be free from too many old beliefs and limited definitions from God. Also, it is time for human being, to let all the fights as a matter of what they are worshipping, go, and start to learn the main purpose of all this way was just to pick a God, believe in it, and worship it, if they are not strong enough to handle difficulties. So, from now on, respect anyone who worships anything, at the first point. It does not matters if we might worship a hidden God named Allah, fire, tree, etc. It is important to worship God, just in case not to reach a dead end. 3 important rules, which any human should apply in his or her life. First, good reflection. Second, good word. Third, good deed. If you already, following these rules, you are at the point why the idea of God was created. I wish you would enjoyed watching our very first episode. Also, we would be more than happy to receive your sincere comments. Thank you so much. We wish you a great time. Please, subscribe our channel for future episodes.